Life beckons. Choose wisely.
Cooper's Canadian Blonde. Well, so I made a short actually. Put a short up of me doing this because I was saying that I'd never do another kit beer. I was saying the kids were sick back in was it November? And so what it was is I used this kit. All I had was white table sugar, so I used 900 grams of white table sugar. I used citric acid trying to invert it. I used 20 grams of tetany for a hop tea. Original gravity was 1040 and it got down to around 10 to 9 or something like that. So yeah, it's in the 4s percentage. For the water, it was just town water, but I used the water filter ones like you use for caravans. I used that. So, and for the yeast, I used Nova Lager. So I had a Nova Lager left over, a big yeast cake. And so I made this all up. I chilled it down overnight, and then in the next day, I got the Canadian Blonde concoction mixture, and then poured it on top of the yeast cake, and she fermented pretty well. So colour wise, it's a blonde. It is a blonde colour. The only malt has come from the tin. Plenty of carbonation. I gave a pretty good belly full of carbonation in it. I think for the kit I paid $20. It's gone up these days. I think it's about $20 from Big W here in Australia for the Canadian Blonde. And like I said, I used the tetany, so the aroma, got a bit of a winey smell to it. I used so much sugar in it. It's very faint. I can tell I've used sugar, that's for sure. Anyway, and the colour I said was blonde, so let's get into it. Cheers is all. Flavour wise, it's got a pretty good for using that much table sugar. I had a pretty good size Nova Lager yeast cake. I fermented it what I normally do, 12 to 13 degrees, and fermented out pretty well. I reckon it's got a light to me, a light grain flavour to the beer. Maybe get a little bit like herbal from the tetany, but it's pretty light. It just tastes like a cheap adjunct macro lager, to be honest with you. That's what it tastes like. It's not as sweet as I expect. I expect it to be a bit sweeter because I use so much sugar. But it's fermented away pretty well actually. I'm surprised. I am surprised. I will say, back in the day, about 10 years ago, when I was first brewing, I used to brew. Canadian Blonde was probably one of my favourite kits. And I think using the Nova Lager is a game changer. You could add a little bit more dry malt to this. Can the sugar and add dry malt. You get a really nice little beer, I reckon. Discard the yeast, don't use the Cooper's yeast. Get a couple of packets, 2 packets of our Nova Lager. I was expecting it to be absolutely pretty ordinary, just because there wasn't real love put into it, but it's turned out alright. You could definitely, like I said, this is a kit I always thought this kit went alright, and it's done pretty well. If you want to put a quick lager on the tap, even if you're all grain, you could have that on tap quite easily. If it's all malt and add some hops to a hop tea, it'd be very nice, very nice. Once again, I'm not getting any There's no homebrew. I can't get. There's no twang. I did do a diacetyl rest on this. You don't really need to have Nova, but I did anyway for a couple of days. Brought it up to about 16 to 17. Like comparing to the all grain and that, it's definitely below. It's definitely not up to all grain standard, but you know, for what it is, a pretty cheap beer really to make. Just using the Caravan water filter for the water. It's turned out alright. So I recommend it, actually. Coopers, follow this, do the Coopers. Don't do the 900 grams of sugar. If you do, I'd invert it, try and invert it, but I would say go the malt, and yeah, just be patient. Let it sit in the keg, put some gas on, let it sit in the keg for a month, and yeah, quite a drinkable little beer. Not too bad for an old cheapo beer. So anyway, there you go. Nova Lager, another win for Nova Lager. Nova Lager making kit beers taste great again. Once again, discard. You're gonna make this, discard the yeast. I think maybe that's the problem with some of these is the kit yeast. You want the better. Just spend a bit extra. We're saying that packet of Nova is about $8-9. So you know, you're looking at about $16-17. But if you use Nova, so if you're all grain and you've got your yeast cake, you can just do it over and just put it on top of the yeast cake, make the concoction, cool it down, pour it on top of the yeast cake, and you get another running of it. And I've made some great beers. I've made some good all grain beers too. Just pouring back to the yeast cake, getting a couple of goes out of it. I've only ever gone twice. I've heard people going more times, but it produces a good beer, and there's plenty of yeast there to ferment away. Alright, thanks for watching this episode. Cheap as chips are brewing with alright success. So you all take care. See you next time.